ever feel like you're just drowning in information?
Oh, yeah.
Like there's just so much to learn, but
Totally.
not enough time.
Mhm.
I definitely feel that way sometimes. That's why we're diving into exponential learning today.
Okay.
We've got some thought-provoking conversations about
Yeah.
how to learn smarter, not just harder, right?
Right. Mhm.
Our mission
Okay.
to help you unlock your full learning potential
Mm-hmm.
and actually make those breakthroughs happen.
Yeah. What's fascinating about these conversations is that they challenge how we traditionally think about learning.
Okay.
We often see it as linear, a slow buildup of knowledge.
Right.
But what if we could learn exponentially, accelerating our growth
Yeah.
and making those aha moments more frequent?
Yeah, that'd be incredible. But realistically, our brains can only process so much information each day, right?
Yeah,
It's like having a limited mental bandwidth.
precisely. We each have a finite capacity for absorbing information.
Yeah.
So the question becomes, how do we maximize the value of that limited mental energy?
Right.
The key takeaway here is to be ruthlessly selective about the information we consume.
Okay, I like where this is going. So it's not just about learning more, it's about learning the right things.
Exactly. Think of your brain like a bank account.
Okay.
Every piece of valuable information is like a high-interest deposit, leading to rapid growth in your knowledge base.
Right.
On the other hand, irrelevant information is like unnecessary spending.
Oh,
It depletes your resources without any real return.
that's a great analogy. It makes you think twice about
Right.
what you're putting into that mental bank account.
To really maximize those mental deposits, I recommend identifying 2 or 3 key areas
Okay.
you want to learn about this week. Anything outside of those areas,
Yeah.
just ignore it for now.
Okay.
It's about prioritizing depth over breadth.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like choosing to invest in stocks that you believe will yield the highest returns rather than spreading your money thin
Yeah.
across a bunch of random companies.
That's a great way to put it. Now, another important concept that comes up in these conversations is the idea of active learning
Okay.
and how it fuels this exponential growth.
Okay. I've heard of active learning, but I'm not sure I fully grasp it.
It's not just about passively absorbing information.
Okay.
It's about engaging with the material, making connections,
Right.
asking questions, and actively seeking out ways to apply what you're learning.
So it's less about highlighting passages in a textbook and more about putting those ideas into practice.
Precisely. And this ties into the concept of lifelong learning.
Okay.
It's not about accumulating knowledge linearly,
Yeah.
but building a connected and efficient knowledge system
Okay.
that's constantly evolving.
What exactly does a connected and efficient knowledge system look like? It sounds pretty complex.
It's simpler than you might think. A connected knowledge system means
Okay.
linking new facts to things you already know.
Right.
This makes recall easier
Yeah.
and helps you build a mental web
Okay.
of interconnected ideas.
I get it. It's like building a mental palace.
Right.
Where every piece of information has its own room and
Yes.
secret passageways connecting it to other relevant information.
That's a great way to visualize it.
Yeah.
And as you build this network, learning becomes more efficient.
Okay.
New information has a framework to latch onto,
Yeah.
and you start to see patterns and connections you might have missed before.
So instead of just memorizing isolated facts, you're building a framework that makes it easier to understand and retain new information.
Exactly. And that's a key characteristic of exponential learning.
Okay.
It's not just about how much you know,
Okay.
but how that knowledge is organized and
Alright.
how readily you can apply it.
That brings to mind the snowball analogy, right?
Yeah.
As we learn, our knowledge base expands, making it easier and faster to absorb new information.
Yeah.
Much like a snowball gathering more snow as it rolls downhill.
That's a great way to think about it. And this is where the concept of exponential growth truly comes into play.
Okay.
Think about compound interest or bacterial growth. Small starting points can lead to incredibly rapid increases over time.
Right.
And it's the same with learning.
So how does this exponential growth actually play out in real life? Can you give me a concrete example?
Absolutely. Let's take language learning.
Mm-hmm.
You start with basic vocabulary and grammar, which might feel slow and tedious at first.
Oh, I remember that feeling from trying to learn Spanish. It was rough going for a while.
But those seemingly simple building blocks
Yeah.
lay the foundation for exponential growth.
Yeah.
As your vocabulary expands
Yeah.
and your understanding of grammar deepens, You're able to move on to more complex sentence structures,
Okay.
start picking up on cultural nuances, and eventually...
When we start thinking in that new language, I remember that click moment in Spanish.
Yes.
When I finally started dreaming in Spanish.
Exactly. That's the power of exponential learning.
Yeah.
It's not just about accumulating facts. It's about reaching a point where you can think critically, solve problems,
Right.
and express yourself fluently in a whole new way.
So by building a solid foundation in the beginning, you set the stage for accelerated growth down the road.
Precisely. And this applies to any field of study.
Right.
Whether it's programming, music, or even mastering a new skill. Those early, sometimes frustrating steps are crucial.
Okay, so if someone's feeling overwhelmed by a new subject, the key is to remember those early struggles are setting the stage for major growth later on.
That's a great takeaway. And it's important to remember that everyone's learning journey is unique. Our capacity for exponential learning is influenced by our existing knowledge, interests, even our environment, and overall well-being.
This makes me think about the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. What if we applied that to learning? Could we figure out the 20% of effort that gives us 80% of the results in any given field?
Now, that's a fascinating question. And it brings us to another crucial aspect of exponential learning.
So we're talking about finding that sweet spot, that 20% effort that yields 80% of the results. I'm all about working smarter, not harder.
Absolutely. And that's where being intentional about what we choose to learn comes in.
Right.
These conversations emphasize that it's not just about passively absorbing information, but actively seeking out knowledge that aligns with our goals, both in the short term and the long term.
Right. It's like setting those financial goals. Short term might be paying off a credit card, but long term could be investing for retirement. Same idea, but with knowledge.
That's a perfect analogy. It's about having that mental filter, letting in the stuff that's going to nourish our minds and help us grow, while filtering out the noise that just clutters things up. That intentionality can make the difference between linear learning and that exponential growth we're aiming for.
Okay, so we've got to be mindful of where we're directing our mental energy, making sure we're investing it in areas that are actually going to pay off.
Exactly. Now, another point that comes up in these conversations is that our mental capacity isn't static. It's something we can actually cultivate and expand over time.
Wait, so you're saying I don't have to be a genius to learn fast? That's actually really encouraging.
By consistently engaging in active learning, challenging ourselves with new concepts, and seeking out diverse perspectives, we can actually increase our ability to process and retain information. Think of it like building mental stamina.
So it's not just about what we learn, but how we learn. We need to be actively engaged, making connections, applying what we're learning to real-world situations.
Absolutely. And that's where specific techniques come into play. For example, have you ever heard of spaced repetition?
I feel like I've heard that term, but I'm not sure I could explain it.
It's a powerful technique where you revisit information at increasing intervals. Let's say you learn a new concept today. You review it tomorrow, then again a few days later, then a week later, and so on. This helps embed the information in your long-term memory.
That makes sense. It's like reminding your brain, hey, this is important, don't forget this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And another powerful technique is active recall. It's about forcing your brain to retrieve information without looking back at your notes. You can do this through flashcards, self-testing, or even explaining the concept to someone else.
That reminds me of something else that struck me from these conversations. Learning isn't just an individual pursuit. Collaboration and knowledge sharing play a huge role in accelerating our growth.
That's a powerful insight. And it really highlights the social aspect of learning. The conversations emphasize that when we share our knowledge with others, we not only help them learn, but we also deepen our own understanding.
It's like teaching is the best form of learning, right? Because you have to really know something inside and out. To explain it to someone else.
And it goes beyond formal teaching. Engaging in discussions, debating ideas, and collaborating on projects all create a powerful feedback loop that accelerates learning for everyone involved. We learn from each other's perspectives and insights.
This is all making me realize that if we want to embrace this exponential learning approach, it's not just about hitting the books harder or spending more hours studying. It's about changing the way we approach learning altogether.
You got it. It's about being more intentional, more active, and more collaborative in our pursuit of knowledge.
Right.
It's about cultivating a growth mindset and embracing lifelong learning, recognizing that knowledge is dynamic and constantly evolving.
Thinking back to that brain as bank account analogy. What if we shifted our perspective and started thinking of knowledge as an investment?
Oh, that's good.
How can we invest our mental energy in a way that yields the biggest returns?
Right.
Both personally and professionally.
That's a fantastic way to frame it. And it really highlights the idea that learning isn't just about accumulating facts.
Right.
It's about developing skills, cultivating understanding, and expanding our potential.
Okay.
It's about investing in ourselves, in our future.
And when we view it that way, it becomes clear that the most valuable investments are those that compound over time.
Exactly.
The ones that build upon themselves and create a ripple effect of growth.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of exponential learning.
Right.
It's not about a quick fix or a one-time deposit. It's about making consistent, intentional investments in our knowledge and skills, knowing that those investments will continue to grow and pay dividends long into the future.
It's like that saying I heard once, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago.
Right.
But the second best time is today.
Yeah.
You can always start learning and growing.
Absolutely. It's never too late to embark on that journey of exponential learning.
I'm feeling pretty inspired.
Okay, good.
It sounds like a whole new way to approach learning, and I'm excited to give it a try. But before we wrap up, there's one more point from the outline we need to cover. So we've talked about how to learn smarter, how to make our knowledge compound like interest.
Right.
But there's one more big idea from these conversations we haven't touched on yet, the idea of expertise.
Okay.
What does it even mean to be an expert in this fast-changing world?
That's a great point. These conversations really challenge the traditional view of expertise, the idea that once you're an expert, you've reached the peak and there's nothing left to climb.
Yeah, like you finally arrived at the top of the mountain.
Exactly.
And you can just plant your flag and relax.
Exactly. But these sources argue that true expertise isn't a destination. It's an ongoing journey.
Right.
It's about constantly pushing the boundaries of your knowledge, embracing new challenges, and recognizing there's always more to learn.
Right.
Even for those who are considered masters in their field.
So even the people we consider the best, they're still learning, still growing. That's kind of humbling, actually.
It is. And it ties back to that concept of lifelong learning we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
It's not about reaching some arbitrary endpoint.
Okay.
It's about cultivating a mindset of curiosity and a thirst for knowledge that keeps us engaged and growing throughout our lives.
It's like you're always a student, always discovering something new.
Exactly.
No matter how much you already know.
Precisely. It's about staying intellectually hungry.
Okay.
Seeking out new experiences and never losing that sense of wonder and excitement about learning.
And the cool thing is, with all the resources available today, online courses, podcasts like this one, books, communities of learners, there's literally no limit to what we can learn.
You're absolutely right. We have access to more information than ever before, which can be both amazing and overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's up to us to curate our learning experiences.
Okay.
Be discerning about the sources we choose and focus on quality over quantity.
It's like having a giant buffet of knowledge spread out before us.
Yeah.
And we need to be strategic about which dishes we're sampling. We want a balanced and nutritious mental diet.
That's a great analogy. And it highlights the importance of being mindful of our information consumption habits. It's easy to get caught in the endless scroll of social media or the constant flood of news headlines. But we need to make sure we're also carving out time for those deep, focused learning experiences that truly nourish our minds.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the key takeaway you want our listener to walk away with today?
I think the most important takeaway is this. Exponential learning is within everyone's reach. It's not about some innate talent or ability, but about adopting a growth mindset. Being intentional about the knowledge we seek and embracing the power of active, lifelong learning.
And remember that snowball analogy we talked about? As we learn more, our knowledge base expands, making it easier and faster to acquire even more new information.
Right.
It's like that saying, the more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know.
That's so true.
Yeah.
But that's also the beauty of it, isn't it?
Right.
There's always more to discover, more to explore, more to learn.
Exactly. And that's what makes the journey of learning so exciting.
Yeah.
It's a never-ending adventure, and the possibilities for growth are truly limitless.
So, thinking about everything we've discussed today, what area of your life could benefit most from applying these principles of exponential learning? How can you start cultivating that growth today?
That's something for you to ponder. Until next time, keep those minds curious and those learning engines revved up.